The rain fell hard on the streets of Oakwood City. Marcus Johnson pulled his thin jacket tighter around his small body. He was only 13 years old, but his eyes looked much older. Life had not been easy for Marcus since his father died 3 years ago. His mother tried her best, working 2 jobs to keep their tiny apartment. But when she got sick and couldn't work, they lost everything. Now, Marcus lived on the streets. He slept under bridges, in abandoned buildings, or sometimes in the city park when the weather was nice. Today was not a nice day. The cold rain soaked through his worn shoes as he walked through the downtown area, looking for somewhere dry to spend the night. Most people walked past Marcus without seeing him. That's how it was for homeless people, especially homeless black kids like him. They became invisible. But Marcus didn't let it make him bitter. His father always told him, "Your circumstances don't decide what kind of person you are. Your choices do." Marcus chose to be kind, even when life wasn't kind to him. As the sky grew darker, Marcus spotted an empty cardboard box behind a grocery store. It wasn't much, but it would keep some of the rain off. He crawled inside, pulling his backpack close. The backpack contained everything he owned: a change of clothes, a toothbrush, a photo of his parents, and a half-empty water bottle. His stomach growled loudly. He hadn't eaten since yesterday when a kind woman at the bus stop gave him a sandwich. Marcus closed his eyes, trying to ignore the hunger pains. Tomorrow he would try to earn some money by helping at the farmer's market. Sometimes the vendors gave him fruit or vegetables for carrying boxes. Just as Marcus was drifting off to sleep, he heard a strange sound. It was faint at first, almost like a whisper between raindrops. He listened closer. There it was again, a weak whimper coming from deeper in the alley. Curious, Marcus crawled out of his box and walked toward the sound. Behind a trash bin, he found its source. A dog lay on its side, fur matted with dirt and blood. The animal was thin, ribs showing clearly through its skin. One leg was twisted at a strange angle. The dog's eyes were barely open, but when it saw Marcus, its tail moved slightly. "Hey there," Marcus said softly, kneeling in the wet alley. "You're hurt pretty bad, aren't you?" The dog whimpered again. Marcus could see it was dying. Someone had abandoned it here to die alone in the rain. Without thinking twice, Marcus took off his jacket and gently wrapped it around the dog. Despite his own hunger and cold, something inside him couldn't walk away. "I don't have much," he whispered to the dog, "but I'm not going to leave you alone." Marcus picked up the dog carefully. It wasn't very big, maybe a mixed breed of some kind. The animal didn't fight or bite. It seemed too weak for that. Instead, it rested its head against Marcus's chest. "I'm going to call you Lucky," Marcus said, "because today wasn't your last day after all." With the dog cradled in his arms, Marcus walked back to his cardboard box. He made a small bed for Lucky with his extra shirt, then sat beside the animal, stroking its sturdy fur. The rain continued to fall outside their makeshift shelter, but for the first time in weeks, Marcus didn't feel alone. "We'll find help tomorrow," he promised the dog. "I don't know how, but we will." Morning came with golden light replacing the night's heavy rain. Marcus woke up stiff and hungry, but his first thought was for Lucky. The dog was still breathing, but just barely. His condition had gotten worse during the night. "Hang in there, buddy," Marcus whispered, gently touching the dog's head. Marcus knew he needed to find help fast, but he had no money for a vet, and most people didn't want to help a homeless kid, let alone a stray dog. Still, he had to try. He carefully picked up Lucky, wrapping him in the now damp jacket. The dog felt lighter than yesterday, which worried Marcus. Lucky's eyes opened slightly, looking up at Marcus with trust that made the boy's heart ache. "I promise I'll find someone to help you," Marcus said firmly. The streets were beginning to fill with morning commuters heading to work. Marcus walked along the sidewalk, asking people if they knew where he could get help for a sick dog. Most ignored him or hurried past. Some looked at Lucky with pity, but offered no real help. After walking for nearly an hour, Marcus's arms ached from carrying Lucky. The dog's breathing had become more labored. Tears filled Marcus's eyes as he sat down on a bench in front of a small coffee shop. "I'm sorry, Lucky," he said. "I don't know what else to do." Just then, the door to the coffee shop opened, and a woman in a white coat walked out. She noticed Marcus cradling something in his arms and came closer. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice kind. Marcus looked up, tears streaming down his face. My dog is dying, he said, even though Lucky wasn't really his. I found him last night, and I've been trying to find someone to help him, but no one will. The woman knelt down to look at Lucky. I'm Dr. Chen. I'm a veterinarian, she said. My clinic is just around the corner. Marcus couldn't believe his luck. Can you help him? I don't have any money, but I can work. I can clean your clinic or do anything you need. Dr. Chen's eyes softened. Let's worry about payment later. Right now, this little guy needs immediate care. 5 minutes later, they were inside a small animal clinic. Dr. Chen gently placed Lucky on an examination table while her assistant helped prepare medical supplies. How long have you had him? Dr. Chen asked as she examined Lucky. I found him last night in an alley, Marcus admitted. I think someone hurt him and left him there to die. Dr. Chen nodded, her face serious as she checked Lucky's injuries. He has a broken leg, he's severely dehydrated, and has signs of abuse. But he's young, maybe a year old. Dogs can be surprisingly resilient. She started an IV line to give Lucky fluids. The assistant carefully cleaned the dirt and blood from his fur. Marcus stood nearby, watching everything with wide, worried eyes. Why did you help him? Dr. Chen asked while working. Most people would have walked past. Marcus thought about this. Because nobody should die alone and scared, he said simply. Even a dog deserves better than that. Dr. Chen paused and looked at Marcus with new respect. What's your name? Marcus Johnson. Well, Marcus Johnson, that's a very wise thing to say, she smiled. Lucky is very fortunate you found him. As Dr. Chen continued working, a customer in the waiting room overheard Marcus's story. The woman quietly took out her phone and began recording as Marcus explained how he found Lucky and spent the night trying to keep him alive, despite having no home himself. Marcus didn't notice the woman recording. His attention was completely focused on Lucky, whose breathing was already becoming more regular as the medicines began to work. Will he be okay? Marcus asked. Dr. Chen nodded. He's got a fighting chance now, thanks to you. For the first time since finding Lucky, Marcus allowed himself to hope. While Dr. Chen worked on Lucky, Marcus sat in the waiting room. His stomach growled loudly, reminding him that he hadn't eaten since yesterday. He tried to ignore it, focusing instead on the dog who needed help more than he did. The woman who had been recording earlier approached Marcus. She introduced herself as Lisa Torres, a local news reporter. That was an amazing thing you did for that dog, she said, sitting next to him. Would you mind if I asked you a few questions? Marcus looked down at his dirty clothes and worn shoes. I didn't do anything special, he mumbled. Anyone would help a dying dog. Lisa shook her head. Not everyone would, especially someone in your situation. Her voice was gentle. Where are your parents, Marcus? Marcus stared at his hands. My dad died 3 years ago. My mom got sick and couldn't work. We lost our apartment. She's staying with my aunt now, but there's not enough room for me. He didn't mention that his aunt had made it clear she only wanted to help his mother, not him. Lisa's eyes filled with sympathy. So you've been on your own? For how long? About 4 months, Marcus answered. I'm okay, though. I know how to take care of myself. Dr. Chen emerged from the examination room before Lisa could ask more questions. Lucky is stabilized, she announced. We set his broken leg, given him antibiotics, and he's on fluids. They'll need to stay here for a few days. Relief washed over Marcus's face. He's going to live. It looks that way, Dr. Chen smiled. He's a fighter. Just then, Marcus's stomach growled again, this time loud enough for everyone to hear. He blushed with embarrassment. When was the last time you ate? Dr. Chen asked. Yesterday morning, Marcus admitted. Lisa and Dr. Chen exchanged concerned looks. Dr. Chen turned to her assistant. Sarah, could you get Marcus something to eat from the deli next door? Get him a good meal, not just a sandwich. While waiting for the food, Lisa continued to talk with Marcus. She was impressed by his maturity and kindness despite his difficult circumstances. With his permission, she took notes for a story she wanted to write. When Sarah returned with a large container of hot food, Marcus's eyes widened. There was roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, vegetables, and even a chocolate chip cookie. He couldn't remember the last time he'd seen so much food just for him. Thank you, he said, his voice choked with emotion. As Marcus ate, Dr. Chen made some phone calls. Lisa finished her notes and promised to check on Marcus and Lucky tomorrow. She left the clinic after giving Dr. Chen her card. Marcus, Dr. Chen said, sitting down beside him. I've called social services. They have a program for emergency youth housing. They can find you a safe place to stay tonight. Panic flashed across Marcus's face. Will they take me away? I need to check on Lucky tomorrow. I've explained the situation, Dr. Chen assured him. They've agreed that you can come back to visit Lucky anytime, and I've hired you as my part-time helper. You said you wanted to work to pay for Lucky's treatment, right? Marcus nodded, hardly believing what he was hearing. Well, I need someone to help around the clinic after school. Feed the animals, clean cages, simple things. When Lucky is better, you can take him home with you. Home? Marcus repeated the unfamiliar word. Yes, home. It might take some time to sort everything out, but you won't be on the streets anymore. For the first time in months, Marcus felt a spark of hope, not just for Lucky, but for himself too. Unknown to Marcus, Lisa's video of him explaining how he found Lucky was already spreading across social media. By evening, thousands of people had seen the homeless boy who had given everything he had to save a dying dog. And one of those people was the mayor of Oakwood City. That night, Marcus slept in a real bed for the first time in months. The emergency youth shelter wasn't fancy, but it had clean sheets, warm blankets, and a roof that didn't leak. Still, he couldn't sleep well. His mind kept returning to Lucky at the clinic. Please be okay, he whispered into the darkness. Meanwhile, across town in the mayor's office, Mayor Diana Wilson was working late. Her assistant knocked on the door. Mayor Wilson, I think you should see this, she said, placing her tablet on the desk. The mayor watched Lisa Torres's video of Marcus. Her eyes grew misty as she heard the boy explain how he'd spent his night keeping a dying dog alive, despite having nothing himself. This happened in our city, she asked. Yes, ma'am, just this morning. Mayor Wilson leaned back in her chair. Find out everything you can about this boy and the dog. I want to meet him tomorrow. By morning, Lucky was showing signs of improvement. His fever had gone down, and he had even eaten a little food. When Marcus arrived at the clinic, his face lit up seeing the dog's wagging tail. He recognized me, Marcus exclaimed as Lucky weakly licked his hand. Dr. Chen smiled. Dogs know who their friends are. He's still very weak, but he's doing much better than I expected. Marcus spent the morning helping at the clinic, cleaning cages and feeding the animals. He worked harder than any employee Dr. Chen had ever hired. Every free moment, he would check on Lucky or sit beside his cage, talking softly to the dog. Around noon, the clinic door opened, and Lisa Torres walked in with her camera operator. Marcus, she called, smiling brightly. Your story has gone viral. Over 200,000 people have seen the video since yesterday. Marcus looked confused. What does viral mean? It means lots of people are watching your story and being inspired by what you did, Lisa explained. People want to help you and Lucky. Before Marcus could respond, the clinic door opened again. A tall woman in a business suit entered, followed by two assistants. Dr. Chen immediately recognized Mayor Wilson and rushed forward to greet her. Madam Mayor, this is an unexpected honor, she said. Mayor Wilson smiled. I'm looking for Marcus Johnson, she said. I believe he's working here? Marcus stepped forward nervously. I'm Marcus, he said, wiping his hands on his pants. The shelter had given him clean clothes, but he still felt shabby next to the well-dressed mayor. Mayor Wilson's face softened as she looked at the young boy. Marcus, I saw what you did for that dog. May I see him? Dr. Chen led them to Lucky's cage. The dog had improved enough to be moved to a regular kennel. When he saw Marcus, his tail thumped weakly against the blanket. You saved his life, Mayor Wilson said, watching the obvious connection between boy and dog. Most adults wouldn't have done what you did, let alone a child in your situation. Marcus shrugged. He needed help, that's all. The mayor studied Marcus thoughtfully. I learned about your situation, Marcus, about your mother's illness and your homelessness. Marcus looked down, embarrassed. You have nothing to be ashamed of, the mayor said firmly. Your mother got sick. That could happen to anyone. The shame belongs to our city, that a child was left to fend for himself on our streets. She turned to Lisa and her camera operator. Are you recording this? When Lisa nodded, Mayor Wilson continued. Marcus Johnson, I'd like to invite you to my office tomorrow morning. I have a surprise for you and Lucky. For me? Marcus asked, stunned. Yes, Mayor Wilson smiled. Our city needs more people like you, Marcus. People who help others even when they have nothing themselves. Will you come? Marcus nodded, unable to speak. As the mayor left, Dr. Chen put her hand on his shoulder. See, she said gently, one act of kindness can change everything. Marcus looked at Lucky, who was now sleeping peacefully. One small decision in a rainy alley had somehow changed both their lives forever. News of Marcus and Lucky spread through Oakwood City like wildfire. By that evening, local TV stations were running the story. People everywhere were talking about the homeless boy who had saved a dog when he could barely take care of himself. Back at the shelter, Marcus sat on his bed, feeling overwhelmed. A social worker named Ms. Rivera had been assigned to his case and was sitting with him. Your mother has been located, she told him gently. She's still recovering at your aunt's house, but we spoke with her today. Marcus looked up quickly. Is she okay? Does she know where I am? Ms. Rivera nodded. She's very worried about you, Marcus. She didn't know you were living on the streets. She thought you were staying with your cousin. Marcus looked down. He hadn't wanted to worry his mother while she was sick. His cousin had let him stay for a few weeks, but then kicked him out. Rather than tell his mother and make her condition worse, he had decided to manage on his own. We're working on a plan to reunite you with your mother, Ms. Rivera continued. But first, you have a big day tomorrow. The mayor wants to see you at 10 a.m. That night, Marcus could hardly sleep. He wondered what the mayor wanted to tell him. Would she be angry that he had been homeless in her city? Would Lucky be taken away from him? Morning came quickly. The shelter provided Marcus with new clothes, clean jeans, a button-up shirt, and a jacket that actually fit him. Ms. Rivera helped him comb his hair and made sure he ate breakfast. You look very handsome, she told him with a smile. Dr. Chen had agreed to meet them at City Hall with Lucky. The dog was still weak but improving steadily. When they arrived, Marcus was amazed by the grand building with its marble floors and high ceilings. This place is bigger than our whole apartment building was, he whispered to Ms. Rivera. People stared as they walked through the halls. Marcus heard whispers of "That's him" and "the dog boy." He felt his face grow hot with embarrassment. Outside the mayor's office, Dr. Chen was waiting with Lucky in a small carrier. The dog was wearing a soft cone around his neck and had a bright blue cast on his leg, but when he saw Marcus, his tail immediately started wagging. He's doing so well, Dr. Chen said proudly. He even ate a full breakfast today. A secretary led them into the mayor's office. Mayor Wilson wasn't alone. The room was filled with people, city officials, news reporters with cameras, and several others Marcus didn't recognize. Marcus? Welcome, Mayor Wilson said, stepping forward to shake his hand. And this must be Lucky. Marcus nodded, suddenly feeling shy with so many eyes on him. The mayor guided him to a seat at the front of the room. Marcus, do you know why I asked you here today? She asked. Marcus shook his head. Yesterday, when I saw the video of you explaining how you saved Lucky, I was deeply moved. Mayor Wilson began. Our city has programs for homeless adults, but we've overlooked the needs of homeless youth. Your story showed us that gap in our services. She gestured to the people in the room. These are community leaders, business owners, and citizens who want to help change that. Today, I'm announcing the creation of the Lucky's Chance program, a new initiative to help homeless youth in Oakwood City. Marcus listened in amazement as the mayor explained that the program would provide emergency housing, educational support, and family reunification services for young people without homes. And you, Marcus, have inspired all of this, Mayor Wilson said. Sometimes it takes seeing one person's courage to remind us of our responsibility to each other. A woman in a business suit stepped forward. I'm Patricia Goldman from Goldman Real Estate, she said. We're donating an apartment for you and your mother once she's well enough to leave your aunt's home. It's a 2-bedroom unit near the hospital where she's been receiving treatment. Marcus's eyes widened. A real apartment? For us? Ms. Goldman nodded. With no rent for the first year, to give your mother time to recover fully. For the first time since his father died, Marcus felt tears of happiness fill his eyes. As cameras splashed around him, he looked down at Lucky in his carrier. We're going to have a home, he whispered to the dog. The surprises didn't end with the apartment announcement. Mayor Wilson placed her hand on Marcus's shoulder and guided him to the center of the room. "There's more, Marcus," she said warmly. "Our community has been touched by your kindness and courage." A tall man in a suit stepped forward. "I'm Dr. Williams, principal of Oakwood Middle School," he said. "We'd be honored to have you join us as a student once you're settled. We've arranged for a full scholarship that covers books, supplies, and lunch program for as long as you attend." Marcus blinked in surprise. School had been impossible while living on the streets. He had missed learning and being around other kids his age. "Thank you, sir," he managed to say. Next, a woman with kind eyes approached. "I'm Dr. Martinez from Oakwood Medical Center," she said. "We've reviewed your mother's case, and we're offering her continued treatment at our facility. We have specialists who can help with her recovery." Marcus looked at Ms. Rivera, wondering if this could be real. She nodded, confirming that these offers were genuine. Lucky whimpered softly from his carrier, drawing everyone's attention. Dr. Chen knelt down and checked on him. "He needs his medicine soon," she explained. "And some rest." "Of course," Mayor Wilson said. "But before we conclude, there's one more thing." She gestured to a police officer standing near the door. He stepped forward, holding a small box. "Marcus," the officer began, "I'm Chief Parker of the Oakwood Police Department. We were deeply troubled to learn that someone had abused Lucky and left him to die. After investigating, we identified the person responsible." Marcus felt a surge of anger at the thought of someone hurting Lucky on purpose. "The person has been arrested and charged with animal cruelty," Chief Parker continued. "But we wanted to honor your bravery in a special way." He opened the box to reveal a small badge. "This is an honorary junior officer badge. We believe you showed the kind of courage and compassion that represents the best of our department." Marcus accepted the badge with trembling hands. "I didn't do anything special," he said softly. "I just did what was right." "That's exactly why you deserve this," Chief Parker replied. "Doing what's right even when it's hard, that's what makes a hero." As the ceremony concluded, reporters asked Marcus questions about his experience. Though shy at first, he spoke honestly about his life on the streets and his bond with Lucky. "I think Lucky saved me too," he told them. "I was lonely before I found him." Dr. Chen helped Marcus give Lucky his medicine while the adults discussed logistics. Ms. Rivera had explained that Marcus would stay at the youth shelter for just a few more days until the apartment was ready. His mother would join him as soon as her doctor approved. As they prepared to leave, Lisa Torres approached with her camera operator. "Marcus, people from all over the country have seen your story now," she said. "They're donating to the Lucky's Chance program. You've started something important." Marcus couldn't quite understand how his simple act of kindness had created such a response. He looked down at Lucky, who gazed back with complete trust in his eyes. Mayor Wilson walked them to her office door. "Sometimes the smallest actions reveal the biggest truths about our city, about who we are," she said. "You reminded us that kindness matters, Marcus." Outside City Hall, a small crowd had gathered. When Marcus appeared with Lucky, people cheered. Some held signs that read, "Thank you, Marcus," and "Lucky's lucky hero." For a boy who had been invisible on the streets just days ago, the attention was overwhelming. But as he looked at all the smiling faces, Marcus realized something important. His act of compassion hadn't just saved Lucky. It had awakened something in his community. "Come on, Lucky," he whispered to the dog as they headed toward Dr. Chen's car. "We've got a whole new life waiting for us." 3 days after the mayor's announcement, Marcus stood outside the door of apartment 304 at Riverside Apartments. Ms. Rivera was beside him, holding the key. "Are you ready?" she asked with a smile. Marcus nodded, though his heart was beating fast. He couldn't remember the last time he had a real home. Lucky was cradled in his arms, still wearing his blue cast but looking much healthier now. The dog seemed to sense Marcus's excitement as his tail wagged steadily. Ms. Rivera unlocked the door and stepped aside. "Go ahead," she encouraged. "It's your home now." Marcus took a deep breath and walked inside. The apartment wasn't large, but to him, it seemed enormous. Clean white walls, windows with actual curtains, and furniture that wasn't broken or discarded. There was a small living room with a couch and TV, a kitchen with a refrigerator and stove, and 2 bedrooms down a short hallway. "This is all for us?" he asked in disbelief. "All for you and your mother," Ms. Rivera confirmed. The community came together to furnish it. Patricia Goldman kept her promise about the rent being covered for a year. Marcus gently set Lucky down on the soft carpet. The dog immediately began to explore, sniffing around his new environment despite his injured leg. "Look at him," Marcus laughed. "He already knows it's home." Ms. Rivera opened the refrigerator to show Marcus that it was stocked with food. The cabinets contained dishes, glasses, and pantry staples. There were even toys for Lucky in a basket by the couch. "Tomorrow is the big day," Ms. Rivera reminded him. "Your mother will be discharged from the hospital. Dr. Chen has volunteered to drive us to pick her up." Marcus nodded, sudden tears filling his eyes. He hadn't seen his mother in nearly 5 months. During their brief phone calls since he'd been found, she had cried and apologized repeatedly for not being able to protect him. Marcus had assured her it wasn't her fault. "Do you think she'll like it here?" he asked anxiously. "She'll love it," Ms. Rivera said, "because you're here." That night, Marcus slept in a real bed with clean sheets. Lucky curled up beside him, his warm body a comfort in the unfamiliar surroundings. Despite the comfortable bed, Marcus woke early, too excited about seeing his mother to sleep late. He spent the morning cleaning the already clean apartment and arranging flowers that Dr. Chen had brought. He wanted everything to be perfect for his mother's arrival. At exactly 10 a.m., there was a knock at the door. Marcus rushed to open it, his heart pounding. Dr. Chen stood smiling in the hallway. Behind her was a thin woman in a wheelchair, his mother. "Mom," Marcus cried, falling to his knees to hug her. Teresa Johnson wrapped her arms around her son, tears streaming down her face. "My baby," she whispered. "My brave, brave boy." For several minutes, they just held each other, making up for all the months apart. Finally, Teresa wiped her eyes and looked at her son properly. "You've grown," she said, touching his face, "and they told me what you did for that dog. Where is he?" As if on cue, Lucky limped over, curious about the new arrival. Teresa reached out her hand, and Lucky sniffed it before giving it a gentle lick. "This is Lucky," Marcus said proudly. "He's part of our family now." Teresa smiled through her tears. "Of course he is." Dr. Chen and Ms. Rivera helped get Teresa settled inside. They explained about her continuing medical care and the support services available to both of them. Marcus listened carefully, determined to take care of his mother just as she had always taken care of him. Once they were alone, Teresa looked around the apartment in wonder. "I never thought we'd have a place like this again," she said softly. Marcus sat beside her wheelchair and took her hand. "Everything's different now, Mom. I even start school next week, and Lucky goes back to Dr. Chen's clinic for a checkup tomorrow." Teresa squeezed his hand. "You saved that dog when you had nothing yourself. Do you know how special that makes you?" Marcus shrugged, embarrassed by the praise. "I just did what felt right." "That's exactly what makes you special," his mother said. "Your father would be so proud of the young man you're becoming." As evening fell, the three of them, Marcus, his mother, and Lucky, sat together in their new living room. For the first time in many months, Marcus felt completely safe. 6 months passed since Marcus and his mother moved into their new apartment. Spring had turned to summer, and now the leaves were changing to brilliant shades of orange and red. Many things had changed during this time, all for the better. Teresa Johnson's health improved steadily with proper medical care. She no longer needed the wheelchair and could walk short distances with a cane. The doctors were optimistic that she would continue to get stronger. Lucky had transformed completely. His blue cast was long gone, and his fur had grown back thick and shiny. No one would guess he had once been a dying dog in an alley. He followed Marcus everywhere, his loyalty unwavering. Marcus thrived at Oakwood Middle School. After some tutoring to catch up on the months he had missed, he proved to be a bright student with a particular talent for science. His story had made him something of a celebrity at first, but eventually he became known for his kindness and hard work rather than his past. On this particular Saturday morning, Marcus woke up early. Today was special, the grand opening of the Lucky's Chance Youth Center. Mayor Wilson had invited Marcus to cut the ribbon. "Mom, are you ready?" Marcus called, adjusting his tie in the mirror. Dr. Chen had helped him pick out a proper suit for the occasion. Teresa appeared in his doorway, looking healthier than she had in years. She had recently started a part-time job as an administrative assistant at Dr. Chen's clinic, work she could do while still attending to her health needs. "You look so handsome," she said proudly. "Just like your father." Lucky barked from the living room, as if agreeing. "He thinks so too," Marcus laughed. They arrived at the youth center 30 minutes early. The building had once been an abandoned community center, but now it was completely renovated. The sign above the door showed a silhouette of a boy and a dog with the words, "Lucky's Chance Youth Center. Everyone deserves a second chance." Mayor Wilson greeted them warmly. "Marcus, the man of the hour." Many familiar faces were there. Dr. Chen, Ms. Rivera, Lisa Torres with her camera, Chief Parker, and Principal Williams. But there were also hundreds of people Marcus didn't know, all gathered to celebrate the opening of the center. "Are you nervous about your speech?" Teresa asked quietly as they waited for the ceremony to begin. Marcus nodded. Public speaking still made him uncomfortable, but he had practiced what he wanted to say. At exactly noon, Mayor Wilson approached the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming today. 6 months ago, a young boy reminded our city what true compassion looks like. He showed us that even in our darkest moments, we can still choose kindness." She gestured for Marcus to join her at the podium. Lucky walked beside him, no longer limping but proudly wearing a vest that identified him as a therapy dog. Dr. Chen had helped train him to visit hospitals and nursing homes, where his gentle nature brought comfort to many. "This center will provide emergency housing for up to 20 youth at a time," Mayor Wilson continued. "It will offer education support, mental health services, and family reunification programs. Already, Lucky's Chance has been adopted in 3 neighboring cities." She handed the microphone to Marcus. He looked out at the crowd, took a deep breath, and began to speak. "6 months ago, I was homeless and hungry. I found Lucky dying in an alley, and all I could think was that no one should die alone. I didn't know that one small act would change both our lives." Marcus paused, looking down at Lucky standing faithfully beside him. "I've learned that kindness creates ripples that spread far beyond what we can see. This center will help kids like me who just need a chance. Everyone deserves that, a lucky chance to turn things around." After his speech, Marcus cut the red ribbon across the center's doors. As people applauded, he felt a sense of pride unlike anything he had known before. Later, as they walked home with Lucky trotting happily between them, Teresa put her arm around her son's shoulders. "You know what I think," she said. "I think sometimes the world gives back what you put into it." Marcus smiled, watching Lucky run ahead to chase a falling leaf. From a homeless boy and a dying dog to a family with a future, their story had come full circle. "Yeah," he agreed. "Lucky taught me that." And as if hearing his name, the dog looked back and wagged his tail, reminding them all that sometimes the greatest gifts come from the smallest acts of kindness.